Welcome to the Profitable Python. I am your host, Ben McNeil, and on this episode, you will meet Vuyisile Ndlovu. Vuyisile is a freelance software developer, open source contributor, and tutorial writer at realpython.com. When he is not coding, you can usually find him with power tools working on DIY projects. Vuyisile, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, this is exciting. So I was just curious. I saw some tweets that you had fired off recently. You just finished PyCon Africa. What was your most favorite part about that?
Oh, I'd say meeting everyone. So the Python community in Africa is divided into small groups that are country specific. And we've been collaborating online for a long time, but we've never had a chance to have a Pan-African PyCon where all the communities are brought together. So it was great to finally meet people I'd only seen on Twitter and on email. And the vibe there was just amazing. I would say it would be an understatement to say PyCon Africa was fantastic because everyone was really happy to be there. Everyone was supportive, and it was just a positive experience for me.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Is that kind of like the main like just seeing the people face to face? That's like the best.
Of course, we went there for the talks, but I enjoyed meeting the people the more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
What is a bigger passion for you, web development or carpentry?
I'd say it's 50-50. I discovered carpentry recently. So I've always loved computers, tinkering with computers, playing with the websites and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But software development is very stressful. So I needed to find a hobby that was less stressful. And I started doing DIY stuff, carpentry. And I've grown to like it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had a lot of time to do it. But if I could make a lot of money and retire, I'd probably do that in my retirement.
Yeah. Do you see any parallels between programming and carpentry? Or is that getting like too far out there?
No, it's fine. I find that the arts are both creative arts, right? You have to think of what you want to do before you do it. You have to design it in your head or on a piece of paper, sketch it out, determine what sort of materials you're going to use, what sort of joints you're going to use, what tools you'll require, and you start on building it. And the building process is a step-by-step process. You make one. If say you're making a table, for instance, you make the tabletop, you make the legs, you glue everything together, join it up. Same with software. You have to design it, think about how you're going to build it, what tools you're going to use, and build it from the ground up. So I found the two very similar, but carpentry is less stressful.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. But if you had it your way, like you would check out with your millions and go hang out with wood and make your creations. That's what it sounds like.
Yes. I wouldn't do it for a living. I'll just do it for just to express my creative passion, you know?
Yeah.
There's an Instagram page and a Pinterest page that I follow where these designers make really interesting, they call them river tables. They take live wood, like maybe from a tree trunk, and then they add colored resin to it to make a tabletop, and the designs look absolutely beautiful. And that's something I'd like to do. The stuff is really expensive. Getting live wood and getting the resins is quite expensive. So like you said, I'll do it after I check out my millions.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. That I've seen some of those resin projects. Like there's definitely some amazing art in that genre.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would you consider yourself a full stack developer, or do you specialize somehow?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a full stack because I'm still pretty new to this development thing. I've only been working professionally as a developer for a year, and I've been doing back-end work up until now. I haven't done a lot of front-end work. Yeah. So I'd say I'm still working on the back end and not full stack yet, but I can do a little front end, but I'm not very strong there yet.
Yeah, so I'm curious about that because basically, like, you're a freelancer. This is how you make your income with this. But you actually, like, there's some way to do these projects where you kind of take the back end to the finish line. Is there some sort of handoff, or the projects just don't really require a lot of like fancy front end stuff? How does that work?
So the last project that I worked on was a customer portal for an events company, right? They were porting an old project over to a new system. It was built in Python and Django. So my role was to build out parts of the API and document that and test it and build a significant chunk of the Django application. And then someone else takes care of the front end. Mm-hmm. So that works for me because I'm not comfortable enough in front end yet to have them give me that position. So I worked on the back end stuff that I can do and then hand it all over to a more experienced professionals in front end.
Yeah, I'm always curious about how this works with people freelancing, because basically, like what you just said is very empowering, because somebody kind of starting out, or maybe like for me personally, like front end is not like my specialty. I kind of gravitate towards the back end too, and it's empowering what you just said, because like you can get really good at that and actually go out and create value and make a living from it. So thanks for sharing that.
No, it's a pleasure. Well, I am learning front end. I'm currently taking a JavaScript course and reading a few books. So hopefully by the end of next year, I'll be able to do front end as well.
Okay, cool. So that's on the horizon.
Yes.
Awesome. So how does working with Mozilla fit into your specialty? Because I know there was a picture that you had on Twitter. You're like, look, like I'm in the Mozilla picture.
Oh, yeah. So that's actually an interesting story. How I got into Mozilla was, I didn't think it would happen, but I'll tell you a story about a time when I was in college, right? Mm-hmm. I had an epic fail. I made a big mistake. So there were some forms I was supposed to fill out just before exams. And I didn't fill out the forms in time. I didn't submit them in time. And because of that, I couldn't sit for the exams. And there were changes in the college setup, and the curriculum changed. And basically, I couldn't sit for the exams, and I had to retake the whole year. And at the time, my financial situation didn't allow me to do that. So I couldn't retake the year. So I had to drop out, and I couldn't continue my education. And at the time, I was crushed because in Zimbabwe, if you want to work in corporate or work in any business, basically, you have to have some sort of qualification from an accredited institution. And I didn't have that. And so I thought, man, my life is over. I'm not ever going to work in tech. I'm doomed. Woe is me. But I discovered that there's an alternative route to getting into tech, which is basically building your own brand, building a portfolio, getting jobs. And one way to do that was to contribute to open source. So that's when I started reading about this open source thing, and that's when I discovered Mozilla. And when I joined, I had heard a lot of horror stories from different open source communities, especially the Linux community, how unfriendly they are to beginners and all that. But Mozilla was very different. They were welcoming and very supportive. And the community actually has an entire team. I think it's called the participation team now. That's dedicated to helping new contributors get on board, find work to do, and support them through their journey. So I got in there. I didn't know much. I think at the time I only knew HTML and CSS. But working on Mozilla projects, I picked up a lot of skills. Like I learned how to use Python. I learned how to use version control, Mercurial, Git. I learned how to work on bugs, how to test software. I learned how to use PyTest. So I learned a lot of the stuff I know now through working on the Mozilla projects with the different engineers and the different teams. And that's where I owe a lot of my success to, working on that project. And many of the people I met working on the project became now in my professional network. They're my friends today. So it fits in, to go back to your question, I'd say Mozilla played an important role in giving me the skills that I have now. I'm working on that open source project. And it also aligns with my values, because Mozilla is an organization that believes in a free and open internet, an accessible internet, and that's sort of stuff that I care about. So working on it was very good because I knew I was doing meaningful work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an amazing story. And what you kind of brought up there, like, it seems scary, and then you hear all this stuff about it, like out there on the interwebs about like, oh, you know, you don't want to go down that route. Like that, how awesome is that that you just pushed through? And I mean, it made for like a really unique life experience.
Yes, definitely. It was a lot of fun, you know, and it prepared me for working as a remote worker because Mozilla is a globally distributed project. So you have contributors and staff members all over the world, and you had to figure out time zones, meeting times, and it helped me be a better communicator too, because when you're working remotely, you don't have face-to-face communication like we have now. You really have to be good in expressing yourself and being succinct and, you know, just right when you're writing emails or bug reports or things like that. So it has been a positive experience for the most part.
Do you have like maybe like one nugget or two nuggets of advice to someone that's like, I want to repeat something like that. I want to build my professional network. I want to get involved with a big project like this and go out there and start to build my brand. Do you have any sort of like nuggets, I guess, knowledge bombs you could drop on the audience?
Yeah. What I'd say is find a project that matters to you, right? Don't just work on any project because you can, but find a project that matters to you. So hopefully it should be something you care about. And using a language stack you either know or are interested in learning. And then if you can, figure out how to reach the mentors or the maintainers of the project. If you can find them online, follow them or email them, tell them you're interested, and have them let you know where they need the most help. Just find the maintainers, tell them you can help, and have them tell you how to help. Or if the project is well documented and it's got a good issue tracker and you can see some issues, find an issue you can work on, express your interest in the issue, work on it, and start. What I'd say is contributions to open source are not always code related. For instance, when I started with Mozilla, I didn't write any code. I was just doing manual testing, which basically meant, say an internal website has undergone a UX overhaul. You take the website, you test it out, just manually, open the website, click here, click there, type that. You know, that's what I did for a few years. And then after that, I tested Firefox. We tested nightly and beta builds just to make sure that no new bugs were introduced. The bugs that were supposed to be fixed were actually fixed. And then after a while, that's when I started coding. But it's possible to do a lot for an open source project without actually coding anything. You could write documentation. You could what they call bug triaging, which is basically getting the right bugs in front of the right people or getting more information from the people who report bugs so that the developers can work on the bugs quicker. So there's just a lot you can do, but it's usually not very clear. But the maintainers usually know what a project needs. So the best advice I can give is get in touch with the maintainers, figure out a way to get in touch with them, ask them how you can help.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. That's really awesome. Are you familiar with the other open source browser project, the Brave project?
Yes, I am.
I'm kind of curious what your take is on that. Are you excited about it at all, or what do you think about it?
So the Brave project was started by what's his name?
The JavaScript guy. Let me look it up.
Yes.
the creator of JavaScript.
Yes.
Who made Brave? Yeah, carry on. We know who we're talking about here.
Okay. Okay. So he used to be CTO at Mozilla.
Okay.
And then he left. I think there was some problem, and then he left, and then he started the Brave browser project. But so I haven't used it at all. But what I do know about it is that it's private. It puts your privacy first, and it has good ad blockers and anti-tracking features. So I've heard good things about that, but I haven't had the time to use it at all. But I think it's good to have more browsers in the market. It creates competition. It gives users choices and options. So I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, and just to cover what we're So it's Brendan Eich, I think is how you pronounce it, or EICH?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's him. Him. Yeah.
Do you?
So he's a guy who created JavaScript. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. The one thing that really caught my eye with that project is their business model, where it's like you get paid to surf, kind of is like what they're going for.
Mm-hmm.
Are you?
They pay in Bitcoin or something, right?
It's like their own token, this basic attention token, which has like it's like 30 cents a token or something like that. Are you a fan of cryptocurrency or not so much?
I think cryptocurrency is a good idea because it enables payments to be made to countries that aren't able to receive payments or transfer payments. It's good for making payments when you want to be anonymous. It's good for receiving payments when you're, say, for instance, if you're in a sanctioned country and or maybe a country that has an oppressive government and you run a journalism agency. So it might not be easy to get funding through the formal channels, but cryptocurrencies enable organizations and groups like that to get funding because Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are not easy to block as compared to conventional payment methods. So I like certain things about cryptocurrencies, but what I don't like about them is I find them very difficult to understand. The concept of cryptocurrencies, how they work, how they're generated, it goes over my head. But I think that the idea is a very good one and it works for some people. I haven't used them myself, but I think it's a good avenue to consider if you are receiving payments or if you want to invest in cryptocurrencies or something like that. But I haven't used them much myself.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Fair enough. The reason that I kind of bring this up, I know I have limited experience with them, but one thing that I've found, there's like an actual integration with the browser. So there's this whole talk about Web 2.0 where you actually, like for Ethereum, for example, like there's special Ethereum websites that are integrated with the token. So you can do, it's almost like its own special browser. And I figured since we're kind of in the web development space, like, do you have any remarks on that, or is it too soon to really tell? Like what an Ethereum browser?
No, I don't know much. I don't know enough to have a comment. Let me put it that way.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, we'll come back to that the next time we do an episode. So, okay, thanks. Thanks for sharing that. So, I did want to touch on what was the biggest takeaway you learned from being self-taught, because that's pretty amazing. Like your accomplishments, what was your biggest takeaway?
I'd say it's figuring out what learning style works for you. That's number one. And number two is keep going at it, right? So on the learning style, there are lots of resources right now, especially when you're starting out. You have videos, you have tutorials, blogs, actual courses, interactive websites, and you figure out what works for you, what works for someone else might not work for you. So figure out what works for you and what sort of learning environment.
I think the audio just went. The audio just went sour. Try. It's really cracking up. Maybe we need to kill the video. You were just getting into the good stuff. Yeah, I can hear you. It's still a little choppy. Let's see. Let's do another sound test real quick.
Okay. Sound check.
Yeah, I hear it a little bit. Do you think it would be good to disconnect and reconnect? Do you want to try that real quick?
All right. Let's try that.
So we'll be right back to the interview, folks. We are just disconnecting and reconnecting now. We're doing a podcast. with Vuyisile Ndlovu. And so far, this has been a pretty fun show, folks.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we are ready to go. You sound great, and the video's here. So where we just left off, you were talking about being self-taught and some of your biggest takeaways, and then you started to dive into it.
All right. So I'd say figure out what a good learning environment is for you, and figure out what your learning style is, right? And the sooner you do it, the faster you'll get to go. So for instance, for me, I find that like you said, you're a night owl. I'm a night owl too. I will study better at night. And I prefer videos to tutorials or books, right? So if I can watch a video and follow along, that's fine. Books are okay for reference sake, but I don't do very well with books. Yeah. And then I find that I can not only learn so much in a day. So I'll just maybe work on through a tutorial for an hour, and that's usually my max. So advice I'd give to someone is figure out what works for you and do that. And then the second thing is don't give up. So when you're starting out, it can be quite disheartening to read a tutorial, think you've got it, and then you try, maybe you look at what other developers out there are doing, and then you think, oh no, I'm so far behind. Just keep going, keep going. And eventually, if you work hard at it, you'll figure it out. It will all click.
Yeah, I love that so much. So like you're talking about like not comparing yourself with somebody else. And that's like, as humans, like, it's almost like if we don't catch ourselves, we consistently go down that path. So I love the message that you're talking about there. Just focus on you, focus on learning about you and how you learn best. I love that so much. Thanks for sharing. When picking up a course to help you grow your skills, how do you size it up to know if it's going to be like worth your time?
But there are three things I look at. Firstly, who the course author is, right? Okay. Do they have any other content out there that is free that I can check out, right? And I'll look at the reviews on the course. What are people who've taken the course saying about it? What are people saying on different websites and not just on the course website? And then the third is a gut feeling. I'll just explain courses have like a few chapters, a few lessons that you can sample. I'll go through that, go through the course outline, and see how I feel about it. So if the course has good reviews, the content author has other work in the public domain that I can look at that looks good, and I feel good about the course, I'll take it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that too, because like that right there could potentially save somebody like thousands of dollars, just going down the wrong path.
Right? I've lost some money not doing that. So I know better now.
Yeah, this is what we do on the show. We take people's experiences and hand them down and hopefully, add some value in the process. So thank you for sharing that. When it comes to meetups and conferences, how do you make the most of those? Because I know you had mentioned something about that in the pre-interview, how you would like rebuild, if you had to start over from scratch, how would you rebuild your network and get profitable? And you said meetups and conferences. So how do you make the most of those?
Yeah. I'll tell you an experience I had. The first job I ever had was I was working in tech support for a VPN company. And how I got the job is I knew the CEO of the company. I had met him at a conference and we were good friends, right? So whenever I go to a conference or a meetup, I mean, the typical talks are important, yes, but to me, meeting people is more important because usually conferences have their videos recorded, so you can always watch them later on YouTube or wherever they're hosted. So my priority when I'm getting to the conference is to talk to as many people as I can and make connections, right? I'll identify, usually there's some people that I'll identify people I want to meet and do some research about them, what's interesting about them, and then walk up to them and talk to them. And usually, because I've done research on them, I've read up about them, I have a few things to talk about just to break the ice, and that gets the conversation going. So I try to meet at least 2 new people on each day of the conference, or after each session, like maybe in the morning session or afternoon session. So you'll find that I don't really spend a lot of time listening to the talks, but I spend most of my time in the hallway track, or speaking to people. I do attend some of the talks because usually I like to blog about the meetups or the talks I attend, but mostly I spend most of the time talking to people. So that has helped me in a lot of ways, because I've gotten to meet really interesting people and diverse people from all over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was kind of the follow up to that question, was how has that served you? And it sounds like your business or your ability to get clients is kind of based on the quality of your network. And so this is one way that you do that. Is that correct?
Yes. So I mentioned the first job I had is I met the CEO of this company. I didn't know he was a CEO of said company, and we just talked, and he talked about how he was a software developer, and I was learning development at the time, and we connected. And then after a few months, I posted on social network that I was looking for a job. He saw that, and he's like, "Hey man, I have an opening in my company. Do you want to work for me?" I'm like, "Hey, yeah, sure. I'm looking for a job." Awesome. So. What I find is talking to people, creating a network, really helps, right? And sometimes, if you want to be aggressive about it, talk to people and find out what their problems are, or what their biggest pain points are in their business or in their daily lives. And if you're a developer, you could sort of place yourself in a position where you offer to solve that problem for them. Say, for instance, you attend a conference on, a retail conference. You could figure out what people in the retail industry have a problem with, and you could go back and build a solution to that problem. And then reach out to your contact that you made at the conference, say, "Hey, I heard you talking about this problem. Here's something I made. Would you be interested in this?" So that's one way to go about it.
Yeah, that's man. I can tell you're going to go far just because of how you would deal with a situation like that. Like, I couldn't agree more with you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Nobody's going to give you $1 out of their wallet unless you're solving a problem for them. And you're just going right to the jugular. Like, what are the problems that you need solved? Or like, how can I orient my solutions around your problems? I love it. Thank you for sharing that. When it comes to making tutorials, because you do the real Python collaboration, have you found that if there's any practices that help make a good tutorial great?
Yes. I'd say doing a lot of research before even thinking of submitting the tutorial. So the way the real Python process works is you propose a topic, and then the editors and internal reviewers go through and okay, this is not okay. So do a lot of research on a topic before you write about it. So I find that if there are books that touch on the subject, documentation, get as many sources as possible, and then pick the best parts from each. And this can be quite difficult to do because some libraries or some aspects of whatever you're writing about may not be well documented. So you may have to dig deep into the source code to figure out how things work. And usually doing that helps because if something is not well documented and you take the time to dig deep into it and then write a tutorial about it, it becomes the documentation, so to speak. So best practice I find is doing a lot of research from multiple sources before writing a tutorial.
Okay, perfect. And when it comes to decomposing these different resources, I didn't know that we were going to go here in this conversation, but I'm intrigued now. Okay. That process you're explaining can be like pretty laborious. So how do you approach something like that? I guess you have to be. Yeah, I'll just leave it open-ended. How do you approach that?
Okay, so the process at Real Python is you create what is called what's called a tutorial outline, right? A rough general outline of what your tutorial is going to cover. So let's suppose, for instance, the last article I wrote was on utilities that are found in the standard library for handling files, right? So the way I broke it down is how do you open a file? How do you read a file? How do you write to a file? How do you create a temporary file? How do you create a directory? How do you rename a directory? How do you move a directory? How do you delete a directory, right? So there's 7 things I wanted the tutorial to have. So the first thing is break the bigger problem down into a bunch of smaller steps, and then research on the specific step you want. Okay, what are the tutorials or the books out there saying about how to read a file? What is the Python standard library saying about this? What video courses saying? What are the authors of the functions or the projects or the framework saying about this? What are their opinions on this? Then once you have those, you move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And then after that, you have a whole bunch of information. And then now it's your job to think of your audience. Okay, who's going to read this tutorial? Is it a beginner? Is it an advanced user? And then tailor it to your audience. So if you're, say for instance, if you're working on an article targeted at beginners, you might have to leave out some of the more abstract stuff and leave in the practical, very helpful stuff that they would understand. So that's one way to approach it. Another way to approach it is, like, I know some tutorials are very long, like book length, you know. Yeah. So what tutorial writers do is they break them up into a series. Say, for instance, this is part 1 of how to do this. This is part 2 of how to do this. But it's actually quite interesting because there's one tutorial that was done by Anthony Shaw. It's a deep dive into C Python. It was so long that the team and he and the team actually thought, you know what, let's turn this into a book, and they're going to be doing that next year.
Okay. So you never know where you're.
I think it comes down. You never know how long a tutorial is going to be. For instance, when I wrote my first tutorial, I thought, this is just going to be 1,000 words, right? And it turned out to be more than 5,000. So because it's just so much stuff, and I couldn't leave out any of the stuff. So I'd say what guides the tutorial writing is the target audience and how much information is in there. So sometimes it makes sense to leave out some information, and other times it doesn't. So it just depends on who you're writing for and what your goals are with the tutorial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I'm curious, like, just because I have so much ignorance in this space, so I'm genuinely curious. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you not post the tutorial on medium.com or your own blog? Like, why Real Python, I guess?
Okay. So I do post on my own website, but I don't get paid for the articles I post on my own blog. Whereas with Real Python, I get paid for the article. So that's it. I get paid for the articles on Real Python, and Real Python gets more traffic. So if I post something on Real Python, I can put a link to my own website, and that way I'll get some of that traffic. So it's an exposure thing.
Okay, cool. And then the team, because you had mentioned there's like a whole team that, like a review team, like they have a lot of moving parts there. So have you been able to leverage that to help yourself grow as a tutorial maker and just overall software developer? Like, is there like some benefit to collaborating with them as well, outside of like the financial and traffic piece?
Yes. So the team at Real Python are very smart people. You know, like you have book authors, engineers, data scientists, editors, and graphics people and video people, and they're very, very talented. So we have a Slack channel, and where we just chat away, and it's always great to hear their experiences and what they do for work, and like other than Real Python. And talking to them, I've learned a lot. And for instance, when I have a coding question, I can just hop onto the Slack channel. Okay, how do I do this? And then they'll point out some libraries or approaches to solving problems that I've never experienced before. And
man, the people there are smart. Like there's one guy who works for NASA, and there's another one who's a professor, and one guy has written a bunch of books. So these are very, very, very smart people, and I feel like I'm standing in the midst of giants whenever I'm there, and I feel very small.
But overall, it's like a great experience. It sounds like.
Learn from them.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
So I would encourage anyone who would like to write for real Python to consider it, because there's a very good tight-knit community, and it's a good experience.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome to hear. So what excites you about the application of AI in fields like disaster prevention, medical, robotics, and ethics?
That's a great question. So I don't work in AI. I don't know much about AI on the technical side, but I do get excited when I think about the possibilities that AI brings. For instance, you mentioned the medical field, right? I believe that leveraged correctly, AI could make good doctors great, right? It will allow doctors to diagnose diseases early and in a more affordable way. I remember reading this project, I think it's a Google project, that takes scans of retinal scans and uses that information from the retinal scan to tell a lot about a person, such as their gender, whether they smoke or not, whether they're at risk of heart disease, or even if they have a certain cancers or whatnot in their system. Just
from their eyes?
Scans. Now, normally human beings, from their eyes, yes.
That's crazy.
From the retinal scan. So the way it works is, so at the back of the eye, the retina, there's a bunch of veins in there, and then looking at those veins, they can tell a lot. So the project took, I think, maybe like something like 200,000 retinal scans and medical records of those people, and they built a model around that can learn and predict what's going on with the person. So just from looking at a retinal scan, they can probably tell whether you're male, female, or whatever, whether you're a smoker or not, and if you're at risk of, say, heart disease, just from a single retinal scan. And so that's AI leveraged for good, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at, say, in disaster relief, governments and first responders to a disaster, say an earthquake or I don't know, a tsunami or something, a cyclone, the first thing they want to know before they get to a place that's been affected is, how bad is the damage, right? What has been damaged? Is it roads? Is it infrastructure? Is it fire damage? Is it water damage, etc.? And getting that information is important because they need to create a damage map and figure out how much resources they need to send out and what they need to do or how quickly they need to act. Now, it's really difficult to do it when the infrastructure is broken, when you can't drive up to the place, or when you can't fly over the place. Now, AI could be leveraged to, say, take satellite images, and satellite images of the area, figure out where the fires are or where the earthquake hit, and AI can be used to create those damage maps quickly and then send them to governments or first responders. And so, for instance, there's a project I read about recently. This is also a Google project. It enables people in a certain geographic area to tell how bad a storm will be before it happens. So the program takes geographic data from the region. There's a river and some mountains, rainfall patterns, and settlements around the river. So it takes that information and information about past floods to predict how bad a flood or cyclone would be, and what houses or what settlements would be affected if it were to flood. So that way they can predict how much damage the cyclone or the typhoon or whatever will cause before it actually happens. And so that helps in evacuating people living in that settlement. So there's a lot of good. And then you mentioned in logistics, say, for instance, in warehouses, AI can be used to create a more efficient and faster workforce. For instance, I know there's an e-commerce company called Alibaba. Are you aware of it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Alibaba uses robots in their warehouses for order fulfillment, right? So the robots are smart. They can they can receive orders, pick out the stuff, take it to packing, and they work 24 hours a day, right? That's a good thing with AI, is that unlike human workers, they need wages, they need to work 8 hours a day, they need to take breaks, they get tired, they want to take some time off. But AI can be used to make a workforce that's fully automated. Now, there's some ethical issues about that, but it can save money, and it can improve profits for a business. I think AI can also be used in education for AI-assisted learning. I think we're going to touch on that because I did contribute to a project that had this AI-assisted learning a little. But there's a downside too. There's an ethical question whenever we talk about artificial intelligence. Like there's privacy concerns, right? What if the AI is misused? What happens when we lose our jobs to AI? And questions like that. So I believe if done well, AI could be very good. It could save lives. It could cut costs, increase profits for businesses. It could be a good force if used and governed well.
Yeah, that's the key. I see a lot of like Elon Musk content where I can never really read the guy very well, but he's like, oh yeah, like we're doing it too fast, and he's like, I tried to warn everyone, and I'm just like, what is going on here? But yeah, I think you bring up a valid point. And
he wants to take us to Mars because
say that again.
I'm saying he wants to take us to Mars to run away from all the AI here.
Yeah. It's something else. That project that you mentioned, was that how do you pronounce it? Opia? OPPIA? Is that the educational?
Yes.
Tell us about that a little bit. I looked it up online. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah. So Opia is an educational platform that's interactive and immersive. So their goal is to create a learning platform that offers more than just basic or static text and images, right? So the way it works is you can learn pretty much anything, but right now the project only has, I think, maths and science lessons. So if you're learning fractions, it presents the lessons in story format, where you click on a story and you interact with the story. And it gives you open-ended questions that you can answer. And how you respond to those questions is how it determines whether you really understand the concept or not. So if you respond to a question incorrectly, it will know, okay, you need to learn this first, because the way you answer the question suggests that you need to learn this first. So how about we revisit this topic first? So it uses a little AI to predict what a user struggles with, or what a user could learn after, based on their strengths and their weaknesses.
Yeah, it sounds like an awesome learning resource. I'm always on the hunt for new stuff like that. And so I'm going to add that to my list. I'm going to dig into it, but I can already tell it's going to be awesome. It already is awesome. So if you were going to give a technical talk next month at an international conference, what topic would you pick?
Yep. Oh, actually, I'm working on that. So right now, I'll talk about testing. I recently learned how to use PyTest, and I think it's one of the best tools in the world. So I want everyone to be on my side. So I'm going to give a talk about PyTest and testing.
Cool. How do you prepare for something like that? Do you, or are you about to find out?
Well, one way is to see if there are any talks already out there on the subject, identify who your target audience is, and just do some research and put something together. So in my case, I just learned PyTest. I haven't used it for a long time. So I'll probably do an introduction to PyTest talk for people who maybe are using unit test, who are thinking of switching over to, or try and convince people still using unit test to switch over to PyTest. So it will probably be a beginner level, intermediate level talk. Nothing that goes into the deep internals of PyTest.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm always intrigued with how unit testing works with like Flask or Django type thing. So yeah, you've definitely got my ear on that.
Okay, all right.
How has blogging served you as a developer?
Oh man, I think blogging has been the best thing I ever did. It's been it's worked very well for me in my career because, where do I even start? I've been blogging for about 10 years now.
Okay.
And so let me explain my situation a little bit. I live in Zimbabwe, in Africa, and I live in a country that doesn't have a very good software development industry. And I couldn't work in corporate because I didn't have the qualifications. So I need a way to prove that I know what I'm talking about or that I know some stuff. So blogging has been my way of doing that. Like if I blog about something, I show that I know how to do X, Y, Z. And that has gotten me a lot of opportunities because some people read my blog and they go, hey, could you do this for us? We noticed that you wrote about this. We'd like you to do this for us. So I've gotten, I think, all the jobs I've gotten and all the opportunities I've gotten directly or indirectly through blogging. So I would say it's been a great help to me in my career. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Are there any
I've even made friends through blogging.
Say that again?
I'm saying I've even made friends through blogging.
Yeah, it sounds like a no-brainer almost. Like if you're a developer and you're not cutting out some time to do blogging, like what are you trying to, what are your goals? Do you actually think you can accomplish those with cutting this out? That's kind of what I'm hearing from you. What are some go ahead.
This is not to say that So this is not to say that good developers, all developers should have a blog, right?
Okay.
Because there are a lot of great developers who don't have any online presence or whatever. But I was inspired by a few successful bloggers, like for instance, people like Jeff Atwood and Joel Spolsky. Jeff Atwood runs Coding Horror. Joel Spolsky runs Joel on Software. And these are the people who founded Stack Overflow. So I think a lot of the success of Stack Overflow came from the individual success of their blogs. And a lot of the great developers I know, like the massively successful developers, have blogs or podcasts or some sort of online presence. So I thought, okay, if they could do it, maybe I should give it a shot. And it's been great.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I was curious,
so what I'm saying is,
go ahead.
If someone can do it, if you're a developer and if you can share whatever knowledge you have in some format. Not everyone can be a blogger, but at least just try. Give talks, write books, write blogs, do podcasts, do video screencasts, something. Just give back to the community, share what you know with some other people.
Yeah, and it sounds like long term, it's really gonna. There's just a huge reward for very little risk. Like you're risking your ego for this huge reward base. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yes. Yes. So when I started, I didn't know what it was going to amount to, and I didn't have any readers. I didn't have any followers. But even now, I don't have a lot of followers. My blog isn't overly popular. Hopefully it will be after this show. But it's at times you feel like you're just sending out your thoughts into the void, like you're saying, you're risking your ego. Is anyone even going to read this? And sometimes you get people with nasty comments like, haha, you don't know what you're talking about. Let the professionals do it. So you're putting yourself out there, right? And there's that risk that, why am I even doing this? But it's a good thing because one, it helps you organize your thoughts outside your own head. It helps you become a better communicator, you become a better writer, and there's a chance that it will boost your profile and get you opportunities. So it's a win-win, even if you don't get any financial reward from it, but you become a better person for it.
Yeah, I love it. What do you think is like one of the biggest takeaways that you've had on writing a good blog post?
Well, I'd say be real. Don't try to write like someone else. Use your own authentic writing style. Pay attention to standards and quality, right? Because people get turned off by sloppy writing, spelling errors, and mistakes in your code. So make sure your content is good. It's up to a certain standard. Your spellings are correct. Your code examples work. Your tests run. And have a target audience. Know who you're writing for. Don't write just like, assume people are going to read your blog. Don't just write into the void. Assume someone's going to read it and picture them when you're writing it. That will help guide your work, because if you know who's going to read, if you assume that someone will read your blog post, you're not going to be sloppy when you're writing. You're going to put your best into it. And one takeaway I have is, don't assume that people reading your blog are not experts, right? They're talented, they're intelligent, but they're not experts. So don't use language like say, oh, just do this, simply click here, simply, because what may be simple to you may not be very simple to someone else. So assume that someone is a beginner, total beginner, but they're intelligent, they can get it. But use simple language, don't use jargon, don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Your readers will appreciate that, and it will help more people understand your blogs and your articles.
Yeah, that is excellent. It sounds like it's a little harder to like it sounds good, but hard to execute on, and so you just have to practice. Like, how do you develop that intuition?
Yeah.
To to like what is simple, just enough complexity to push them along. Like that's some tough stuff.
Yes. So always ask for feedback from people who read your blog. The comments they give you, or post it. Like what I did personally was I share my blog posts everywhere I can, and I always ask for feedback. So if someone doesn't understand something in a blog post I wrote, that means I need to work on simplifying either the blog post or future blog posts. So always get feedback. That's one way to make sure you're writing content that's not overly complex.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see here. What do you do to protect your focus from the weapons of mass distraction?
Oh, okay. Twitter, YouTube, and WhatsApp, those are the weapons of mass distraction. Very bad for focus. Oh, man. So first thing is plan my day, right? Plan out my day, create a to-do list. This is what I'm going to work on. I'm going to spend X amount of time working on this. And until that's done, no toying with WMDs.
Yeah.
That's a great help. Planning your day. It helps keep you focused. So even if I go into a YouTube rabbit hole, I'm like, oh no, I need to do something. Let me check my to-do list, So planning your day helps. I've heard some people say they actually use applications. I've never used those before, but apps that block your access to these social media websites. I haven't tried those out yet, but for me, just planning your day and sticking to the plan until you're done works for me.
Okay. And I'm sure there's some methodology you use to prioritize, or, just because you have a to-do list, like there's some sort of order, like something has priority, or how do you kind of, I guess it's just planning and revisiting your plan every day.
It's a very simple process. I tag tasks like this is important, not important. And then there's important, not so urgent. So that's how I do it. I just check tasks. Is it important? Is it urgent? Is it not important? So I do the important and urgent tasks first, and then everything else follows after that. So it's just an order of urgency and importance.
Yeah. You're a 7 Habits guy, aren't you?
I haven't really read it, but I've read a bunch of summaries about it. So yeah.
Because that's some Quadrant. What you're talking about there is some of the Quadrant stuff that they talk about, and I love that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
I will definitely read that book now. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but I haven't actually gone out to get it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like literally they must have been listening to you and they stole some material from you or something, because they're literally talking with that language. Very very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some tools that you use to track deadlines?
Oh, I don't actually use any tools. I have, except one. I have a tool called, I don't know what it's called. It's a tool that's built into my Ubuntu. It's a to-do list app. And, but I basically do things the old school way. I write down, I have a notebook. I write down stuff on my notebook and put the deadlines there. That's what I do. I don't use any special tools or anything. I have a to-do list app on my computer, but I just write deadlines down in a book and then check them off.
Yeah, that's perfect. What sort of habits do you practice to keep a project on or ahead of schedule?
Creating daily to-do lists. Like I prefer breaking things down to the smallest unit possible. So I plan out, say maybe a 3-month plan. This is what I'm going to do the first month. This is what I'm going to do in the second month, and so on and so on. And then I like to break it down by the day. Okay, what am I doing today to achieve my monthly goal? And then I come up with tasks for that day. Usually planning it out that way works. It works very well, because I get, when I have too many goals in my head, I get confused and anxious. And so if I just focus on a few goals for the day, that works. At least I know if I work on these goals, I'm moving toward the bigger picture goals.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And let's see here. I have just a couple more questions for you. I know we're getting close to our hour here. How would you?
Not a problem.
Oh yeah, no, you're fine. Okay, so let's see here. What soft skills have given you the biggest return on your investment when building a professional network?
I'd say the first one is empathy, right? People are diverse. People are very, very different. And to understand people, I mean, to be able to connect to people, you have to understand them, right? So I think that's the biggest thing I learned, was how to understand other people. So people have different lifestyles and religious views, political views. It's important to understand why they feel that way, why they believe those things, even if I don't necessarily believe in the same things. And that helps avoid a lot of problems and a lot of conflict. And it also helps to connect with people, because I find that people generally don't like people that they don't agree with. But it's because they don't understand them, and that's all. So empathy, understanding other people, has been one of the greatest skills I learned. Another one is I don't really like talking to people, but I've had to learn, make conversations, connect with people, and that's been amazing, because I've met some of the most wonderful people through just walking up to someone and saying, "Hi, what's your name? What's your story?" You know, it's not something that comes very easy for me, but learning to do it has been very good. Yeah. So I'll tell you, empathy and learning to approach people.
Okay, perfect. Those are awesome ways to, I mean, I like immediately when I hear those things, I'm just like, man, like, where do you go acquire that knowledge? Is it just through, like, you know, the pain of having bad experiences? Like, I mean, is it possible to read it out of a book, like what, is it just hardwired?
Well,
Like, yeah.
Like anything in life, there's theory and there's practice, right?
Yeah.
So what I'd say is, to understand people, Twitter has been great for me, because Twitter allows me to hear the voices of so many different people. So I follow all sorts of people, from different diverse backgrounds. So following people and hearing their stories will help you understand them. And so follow as many people as you can from diverse backgrounds. That's how you can learn empathy. Or if you can, talk to people, put yourself, immerse in people's culture or in people's countries or whatever, in the backgrounds of people that you want to get close to. That will help you to understand. And then when you're talking about a book, I have read a few. I think there's a book by a developer called John Sonmez. He runs simpleprogrammer.com.
Yeah.
He wrote a book, it's called Soft Skills That Every Developer Needs, or something. But it's got soft skills in the title, and it talks about this in great length. For instance, how to build soft skills, how to build a brand, how to be successful as a developer, and it focuses on the soft skills and not the technical skills that you need. So that's a good book to read if you're looking to learn that stuff from a book. But of course, you have to go out there and practice. You have to talk to people. Just without any end goal, just talk to someone to get to know them. Don't go there with an ulterior motive, and that helps connect with a lot of people.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. How would you build your brand if you had to start over tomorrow?
I guess I'll do the same thing I've done. I would create an online presence. I would meet as many people as I can, figure out how to solve problems for them, get the right reviews, give me testimonials, glowing testimonials. That's what I would do, yeah.
Okay, great. And why is it relatively easy for you to get clients and jobs right now?
So it's about creating a brand, right? So generally, clients and employers don't trust people who apply for jobs because they don't know anything about them, right? But when you have a brand, or we have some sort of online presence, say a blog, it's easy for someone to look you up and figure out whether you have the skills they need or the personality that they like, just from going through your Twitter or your social media or the content of your blog. So I find that when I'm interviewing with clients, it's most of that work is done for me, because they'll go through my online resource and like, oh, okay, this guy blogged about this, blogged about that. Does he know how to do this? And if they don't find any of that, that's when they'll ask that's what they'll ask in the interview. So I find that because I have a blog, it's easier for me to get clients compared to someone who doesn't. This might be different for other developers, I don't know, but for me, it's relatively easy. It's not easy, but it's easier.
Yeah. Easier if you didn't have that kind of infrastructure in place.
Exactly. Easier if I didn't have it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we talked about Opia. What attracted to you, or what attracts you most to that project? I know it's like a great learning resource, but is there anything else that you wanted to add on Opia?
It's their mission. What their mission is to provide free and interactive learning experiences to people from underserved communities, right? So take, for instance, in Africa, there's a general shortage of math and science teachers, right? So a platform like that could be used to help students from Africa learn math and science. Right, so that's what attracted to me. Okay, this is a very useful tool that could be impactful in the lives of other people. So that's what made me want to contribute to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And do you have, like, if that's triggers somebody else to maybe in the audience to want to collaborate with that, how would they get in touch with that group? Is it pretty easy? Like you just look them up and fire off an email, or?
So getting started with Opia isn't as easy as getting started with Mozilla. It's a smaller team, a very busy team. There's lots of work they're working on. But the way it works is you go to the website, it's opia.org. There should be a link to contribute or volunteer, and you specify what sort of volunteer work you want to do. So say you want to do design work for them, click on the design link, and then there's a form you fill out where you state your interest, and then someone from the team will usually email you back within a few days. They also have a chat. It's a Gitter chat group that you can join to ask questions, and have a GitHub page that's got issues and a very detailed wiki on how to get involved. So we'll add links to those in the notes and the description.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. And another thing I wanted to touch on, when the going gets tough and we want to quit, what is your message?
Well, you feel like quitting, but just don't. Just keep going. Keep going at it. The message is trust the process. Keep going. It will click eventually. Things will fall into place eventually. So just keep going. I had a problem when learning Python. I found it very difficult because I find programming difficult, and so it didn't come naturally to me. And for a long time, I thought I was dumb or stupid. But then I figured out, no, I'm not dumb. This stuff is just hard. Thinking of ways to talk to a computer and telling a computer what to do isn't easy. So if to anyone who's listening, watching, if you're going through a hard time learning development and that sort of thing, and you're thinking you're not smart enough, it's not that. Computer science programming is difficult. Just push through it, keep going, don't give up. It's going to fall into place and it's going to click. And you won't even realize it. Just one day, it's just going to, you have an aha moment, a light bulb moment.
Yeah, that's an awesome message. Thank you for sharing that. And what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
I'd say I took this from the Google motto. I don't know if they still use this. It's "Don't be evil," right? That sums up pretty much all the code of conduct documents I've ever seen. Just don't be evil. Be a nice person. Be nice to everyone around you. Yeah, that's something to live by.
I love it. Thanks. What about a good non-technical book that you think we should read in going into 2020, I guess?
There's a book called Off to be the Wizard. I can't remember who the author is, but it's a fiction book. It's about a programmer who discovers a file on a server, and this is a special file. Any tweaks he makes to the file actually tweak the reality. So any modifications he makes to the file actually affect reality. So he discovers that he can tweak his bank account, tweak his looks, and he starts doing that, and then he gets into trouble with the FBI, and then to escape the FBI, he runs away and goes back in time into medieval England and poses as a wizard. So he wants to use computer programming skills to pretend to be a hacker and whatnot. So I really enjoyed that book, and I think every programmer needs to read it. It's a funny, hilarious, nerdy book. It's called Off to be the Wizard.
Off to be the Wizard. Yeah, well, I'll make sure that's part of the call to action here. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make sure that's in the call to action and the links and stuff. That's awesome. What about programming languages going into 2020? Are you excited about any particular ones, or are you just probably Python is somewhere on there?
So Python is good. I'll still be using Python probably, but I'm learning JavaScript now, and I've been hearing a lot of talk about TypeScript and GraphQL, so I'll look into those next year.
Awesome. What do you want people to get out of this interview?
Three things. Firstly, if you're learning development and you're just in the trenches, just keep going, right? Don't give up, and find a network. Find people who are support group, people who help you along your journey. Online, it's better if you can find people you can meet with physically in a meetup or at a conference or something. But try and find people who can support you. Don't give up. Another thing would be, if you can, create some sort of online presence, a portfolio, a blog, a screencast. It will serve you in the long term. And I'll be open for new clients in January. So if you're listening to this and you need a junior to intermediate developer to hire, I'm open.
Yes.
I'm available.
Yes.
So yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm.
No, thanks for bringing that up. And how do people, what's the best way for people to reach out to you and connect? Is it like the socials like LinkedIn and Twitter? Should we send them to a blog? I'll put the links in the description as well.
Oh, yes. So the best way is I'm active on Twitter, and another way is go on my website. So Twitter is the best way to reach out to me. Okay.
Perfect. Well, with that being said, I think we'll wrap up the show here. This has been a blast. Vuyisile and Ndlovu, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to see what.
No, thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. All right, folks. We'll talk to you soon.